Welcome back to the Backyard Professor Responds videos. I'm going to talk about the Serpo project. I got it from studying Dan Burish, a very controversial, to say the least, figure in the ufology discourse. I've been studying him for the last little while, and his story, like it or hate it, believe it or disbelieve it, is truly one of the most unique original stories that I have ever come across. And it was from him that he mentioned the Serpo project. And I want to share some ideas on what it is, what happened, how it happened, and why you may or may not have heard of it yet. This is a story like Night Shift. What's his name? Clinton at Night Shift. Fun program. He says this is a story that just keeps resurfacing. It's not going to go away. And it is controversial. So what is the Serpo project? That is the question that we want to know. Steven Spielberg says, I really found my faith when I learned that the government was opposed to the film. If NASA took the time to write me a 20-page letter, then I knew there must be something happening. He's talking, of course, about his movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He released it in 1977. An alien spaceship lands by prearrangement with the U.S. government on a high mesa called the Devil's Tower in a remote corner of Wyoming, and an ambassadorial exchange takes place between the aliens and the humans. A single alien disembarks. He's escorted away, probably to a secret site. And then 12 American astronauts in orange jumpsuits and industrial-strength sunglasses with duffel bags slung over their shoulders, 10 men and 2 women, marched into the spacecraft to be whisked away to the alien home planet. In the previous scene, they are blessed by a clergyman who refers to them as pilgrims. Was this just some inventive touch conceived by Spielberg? Or did he base it on something real? Do they make our movies in a vacuum, or are they doing slow disclosure to acclimatize we human people to this really odd reality that we truly know next to nothing about? Now, since it's widely believed in UFO circles that the prearranged alien meeting did take place at or near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, and this happened in April of 1964, it seems not unreasonable to true believers to suspect that Spielberg may have had an inside track on classified information. Where he got it, we wouldn't know. And he also seems to have understood the exchange between aliens and humans, where an alien race might have been a real event. So in what could be an unprecedented break with government secrecy policy, a few former military insiders, well, they have come forward now, much to our benefit, I suspect. And what they're saying is this exchange that happened is real. It actually took place almost exactly as depicted in Spielberg's movie. So through the DIA program referred to as the Operation Crystal Night, or what is now being called Project Serpo, it's been claimed that 12 astronauts left the Earth in July '65, and they were taken to a planet called Serpo in the constellation Zeta Reticuli aboard an alien spaceship as part of an exchange program. So the bulk of the information about this program is said to have been dribbled out to the world through 21 emails. And these emails are from an individual that's only known by his handle called Anonymous. And he only disclosed this to a closed circle of high-level UFO insiders that began November 2nd, 2005. So Anonymous says that he was formerly a senior officer of the Defense Intelligence Agency and is now the official spokesman for a group of 6 of those DIA personnel. 3 of them are retired, and 3 are still currently employed there. It was decided by the group and agreed to by Anonymous that a website should be created to publish all of these emails between these DIA agents. Put that on the internet. Put that out there for people to look at. One of the researchers in the group, Bill Ryan from England, volunteered for the job. And so we ended up getting Serpo.org, what has now developed into the official source for all Serpo-related information. And it is a pretty big site. There's a lot of discussion and information, a lot of links, a lot of news articles, a few YouTube videos, etc. We also get updates from Ryan. We get a link to a public forum, and we get supporting emails from other insiders who had knowledge of the Serpo project. For the UFO community, at least, the site has become something of a sensation. For what it's worth, this is the story offered on the site, and we're only going to, I'm getting this from another article, but we're going to give some highlights. A presidential decree is told by Anonymous, which is utterly amazing. If it is true, then at a minimum, the entire history of the government pretending to be ignorant about UFOs and extraterrestrials is completely blown away. And, of course, it begins at Roswell. Now, Anonymous says that the Roswell crash did occur, but it involved 2 alien craft. The first was found relatively intact, embedded in a hillside southwest of Corona, New Mexico. That happened July 5th, the same day today, but in 1947. It was found by a university archaeology team, 75 miles northwest of Roswell. It's referred to as the Roswell crash because all the remnants of the crash were brought to the Roswell Army Air Force Base there, and there the military took control of the information. The second crash site wasn't discovered until August 1949, and it involved another downed craft. It was found almost completely intact at a remote place outside of Datil, New Mexico, by 2 ranchers. So evidently the 2 spacecraft had collided somewhere near the Brazil Ranch. And this tells us why the debris field was so big. But the second craft, before hitting the ground itself, had limped onto the vicinity of Datil, 80 miles west of Corona. So there were 4 dead aliens, the account goes. They were found at the Corona site, 6 at the Datil site. 1 alien did survive the Corona crash, and he was found hiding behind a rock. He was taken to Los Alamos and became known as EBE-1. Now, EB, the Ebans is what they're called, stands for Extraterrestrial Biological Entity Number 1. EBE, or an Eban. Well, he did speak in tonal variations, just as in Close Encounters detailed. The scientists at Los Alamos found a way to communicate with him, and he informed them that he was from a planet in the constellation Zeta Reticuli. This is about 40 light years from the Earth. The constellation was referred also in the famous 1966 UFO abduction account of Betty and Barney Hill, which makes this doubly interesting. This particular alien, EBE number 1, also provided researchers with a complete explanation of all the devices found in the spacecraft, one of which was a piece of equipment for communicating with his home planet. And that one, fortunately, survived the impact. However, the Los Alamos scientists could not get it to work until they discovered how to hook it up to the energy source on the crashed corona disk. That happened early summer 1952. EB1 unfortunately later died that summer after spending 6 unanswered messages to his planet. After his death, according to the records of Anonymous, the Los Alamos scientists figured out how to use the device correctly to communicate with the extraterrestrial race that they had now named the Ebans. Lucky for them, they received their first reply December 1952. So eventually, through trial and error, for several years, they were able to converse in rough English. Over the next 9 years, the communication wrinkles were slowly ironed out. Of course, it was greatly done by trial and error. Finally, in 1962, there was an arrangement made that the Ebans would send another mission to Earth in April of 1964. And we would meet the craft at Holloman Air Force Base near Alamogordo, New Mexico. And by this time, President Kennedy was in office. So here's how Anonymous put it. Several months into the planning process, President Kennedy decided to approve a plan to exchange a special military team. The USAF was tasked as the lead agency. The USAF officials picked special civilian scientists to assist in planning and crew selection. It was arranged that we would send 12 astronauts to Serpo, and they would leave one Eban here in the custody of the U.S. government. Well, as you can imagine, the selection and the training of the 12 astronaut ambassadors was an extraordinary undertaking. After months of discussion, it was ultimately decided that they be career military, single with no children, and preferably orphans themselves, and with multiple special skills. Originally, about 56,000 files were screened, of which 158 were picked by the selection committee. And the final 12, who ended up being 10 men and 2 women, plus 4 alternates, were chosen based on complex psychological, medical, and other tests. All of the team members were sheep-dipped, quote, sheep-dipped. In other words, all identification records were purged, including their Social Security, the IRS, medical, military, so on. They were all listed as missing and discharged so that no connection with their former identities remained to be found, and they were then assigned 3-digit numbers as new identities. And they went through a very difficult training for 6 months, mostly at Camp Perry in Virginia. Now, Anonymous says each team member had to endure extreme psychological and physical training. In one training test, each team member was locked inside a 5-foot by 7-foot box, buried 7 feet underground for 5 days with just food and water, no contact with anyone else, and in total darkness. 4 of the team members who were pilots were taught to fly an Eban craft back to Earth, using for training the spaceship recovered in 1949. And they did this because if it was necessary to escape from Serpo, they could do so. And in addition to the 4 pilots, the team consisted of 2 linguists, 1 biologist, 2 scientists, 2 doctors, and 1 security man. They were all given suicide pills, and the team was assigned 4 .45 Colt revolvers and 8 M2 carbine rifles. The 1964 rendezvous occurred almost exactly as planned. 2 Eban craft entered our atmosphere during the afternoon of April 24th, 1964. After an initial mix-up, 1 landed just west of Holloman Air Force Base, near the southern entrance to the White Sands Army Base, precisely at the designated location. And the alien visitors were greeted by 16 senior United States government officials. We don't know whether or not President Johnson was among them at this time. The Ebans brought electronic translating devices with them to facilitate communications. The remains of the 11 dead aliens were taken on board. Anonymous does not give the agenda of the meeting, but it was believed they presented us with the, quote, yellow book, unquote. That is a complete history of planet Earth. I've heard that is several thousand pages. The 12 astronauts were ready to board at that meeting and waited on a bus. But the aliens decided then that the exchange should wait until 1965. So in July of 65, an alien craft returned, this time to the Nevada Atomic Test Site. Very much like the scenes in Close Encounter, this was a simple, unceremonious working meeting. The 12 courageous astronauts boarded the Eban craft, along with 40 tons of supplies for an intended stay for 10 years. 4 of them would never see Mother Earth again, 2 would die, and 2 would choose to remain on Serpo. The others would not return until 13 years later. The trip to Serpo took 10 months. It was during this time the astronauts experienced considerable discomfort. They were offered Eban food, but they all agreed that it tasted like paper, and they stuck with the sea rations they had brought along. The diary of the team commander recounts the second day on board the ship. We sat in the chairs, and a clear container was placed over us and the chair. We were isolated in this bubble or sphere. We could breathe. Okay, and we could see out, but we felt really dizzy and confused. I think I fell asleep or fainted. I think this is another day, but my watch says 1 hour since we sat. So they used small metal containers for elimination, which the Ebans emptied for them. Eventually, they were able and allowed to wander freely around the enormous ship. The team was able to communicate with Earth headquarters at the Kirtland Air Force Base, using the alien device for the entire trip, we're told. Prior to reaching Serpo, the team member known as 308 had some sort of accident and died of a pulmonary embolism. The Ebans were respectful of the funerary rites of the astronauts, but they took possession of the body. The team commander's account of the landing is rather vivid. We see the planet for the first time. We walk down the ramp, large number of Ebans waiting for us. We see a large Eban, largest one we've seen yet. I guess this guy is the leader, about 1 foot taller than the others. The leader tells us we're welcome to the planet. We are led to an open arena. Looks like a parade field. The ground is dirt. Looking up, I see blue skies. The sky is very clear. We see 2 suns, one brighter than the other. The landscape looks like a desert, say like Arizona or New Mexico. There's no vegetation that we can see. There are rolling hills, but nothing but dirt. The brightness is almost too much for our eyes without sunglasses. What a planet. They were quartered in 4 huts that appeared to be adobe-like, and all their gear was stored in an underground facility. The temperature was 107 degrees Fahrenheit. The buildings all had lights and electricity generated by a small box. They were able to plug their electrical devices into the box, and they all worked. The one they called EBE-2 was a female, and she spoke English well. The team commander asked her for the body of 308. They were taken to a large building where they met an Eban doctor who spoke English. The commander's diary describes the confrontation. The doctor told us that 308's body was not inside the container. The Ebans had done experiments with 308's body because they considered it an honor to have such a specimen to work with. The doctor then told us that they have used 308's body to create a type of cloned human being. I stopped the doctor at this point. I told the doctor that the body of my teammate was the property of the United States of America, planet Earth. The body did not belong to the Ebans. I did not authorize any experiments on the body of 308, and it ended up being a rather tense situation. The Ebans were upset with the team's reaction, and EBE-2 told them that everyone should be nice, and repeated it several times. The astronauts had to back off to prevent a major escalation of the incident. The commander and the scientists, number 700 and 754, were given permission to view what was left of the body of 308. This brought them into a building where biological experiments were being carried out. They were shocked by what they saw. Here's what the commander indicated they were viewing: strange-looking bodies, not human bodies, at least not all of them, from other planets being grown and maintained in tubs. The Eban doctor tried to explain the science behind their work, but the Earthlings didn't comprehend because they didn't really understand DNA biotechnology in 1965. The team commander concluded that it was all evil stuff. He says, "I saw the dark side of this civilization." Now, the population of Serpo is about 650,000. That's for the whole planet. Anonymous says that the Eban civilization is about 10,000 years old, originating on another planet, which they were forced to leave 5,000 years ago due to volcanic destruction. The Ebans fought a devastating interplanetary war about 3,000 years ago. They wiped out their enemies using particle beam weapons. The war lasted about 100 years. The Ebans have a council of governors, which is in complete control of the population with membership for life. They didn't observe any crime while they were there, but there is an army, and this also acts as a police force, but there's no guns or weapons of any kind were seen by the team. There's one large community, which is the center of the civilization. All the industry is concentrated there. The Ebans do not use any type of currency. They are all issued whatever they need from central distribution centers, and all adult Ebans do some type of work. Now, on the 3,000-page book, discussing the timekeeping was a problem for the astronauts since the batteries controlling the timepieces brought by the team eventually ran out. That meant they could not track the calendar. They eventually relied on Serpo time, which was governed by the movement of their suns. So they lost track of Earth time and ended up staying 13 years instead of 10. It was determined by Earth scientists that Kepler's law of planetary motion did not apply to Serpo. Carl Sagan was consulted on this, and he wrote about 60 pages of opinion on the subject, but ultimately had to acknowledge that earthly laws of physics do not necessarily apply out of this solar system. The 8 astronauts returned in 1978. They were debriefed for a solid year by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and this resulted in a 3,000-page book. Anonymous claims to have a copy of this book. They were then released into civilian life. The last survivor of this brave and historic band of pioneers passed away in 2002. They had all absorbed large doses of radiation while on Serpo, and it is believed that this shortened their lives. So in retrospect, it seems a shame that President Kennedy didn't live to see his initiative become a reality. He was assassinated only 5 months before the first landing. Would he have used the occasion to reveal the extraterrestrial connection, perhaps with worldwide TV coverage? Could that have been his plan from the beginning? Perhaps some powerful insiders didn't want that to happen. In any case, thanks to Steven Spielberg, maybe we got to see it after all. And that's essentially the information as told by Lynn Karsten from the Serpo website. Remarkably interesting account. So I will share more with you as I discover about Serpo and other projects that are interrelated with it. Some of the vast and very interesting technological apparatus that is involved, such as the looking glass. And this in and of itself is one of the most remarkable tales that I've ever heard. And we will be sharing more along with some of the information of the life of Dan Burish, who apparently is still alive, although he is in hiding, as you could well imagine, because his story is so absolutely wild beyond incredible. And it's interesting because that's what gives the split with us. You either think he's totally off his rocker and lunatic, making it all up, or you think he's had an astounding life of UFO experience. And we'll investigate that, so stick around, hit the like and subscribe button, share this video as you can with friends, family, and neighbors. Appreciate all of you guys' support, and I will catch up to you just as soon as I can. Have a great day.